Why were they in such fear? Because these are self-realized souls. These are great devotees. And the Jivatma is beyond death. Najayate mriyate va kadachit. Krishna says the soul is never born and never dies. So that snake couldn't kill this child, couldn't kill the soul. So why were they so attached to the body of this child? Hare Krishna. Because on the spiritual platform, the intersection of spirituality, transcendence with this material world is fascinating. That the Lord utilizes the vulnerabilities of material nature to increase the ecstasies of the love of his devotees. They were so totally saturated in their motherly love for the Lord, to protect the Lord, they were afraid. Now, Bhagavad Gita tells us one of the first qualities of a self-realized soul is they're fearless. Abhaya charanarabindare. When you take shelter of the Lord, you become fearless. Because you realize there is no birth and there is no death for your soul or for anyone else's soul. So what's the reason to fear? Yet, Yashoda, Nanda, and these forms of Jagannath Mishra, Sachi, and all these great devotees, they were totally engulfed in fear. But it wasn't material fear. They were in a state of total fearlessness because they had no material attachments. Their attachment was for God, even though they didn't know he was God. If Lord Chaitanya would have revealed to himself to be God to them, they couldn't love him as a child, not spontaneously. They had already realized God in full. Therefore, the Lord appeared in such a way to increase the intimacy of their relationship, where their parental affection eclipsed their knowledge of his supremacy, to facilitate deeper feelings of affection. The Nectar of Devotion, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, explains that there are apparently material impetuses that increase the ecstasy of love. And one is fear. It has nothing to do with material selfish ignorance. Just like the deity is Radha and Krishna. And naturally, we read about the Goswamis and their descendants in Vrindavan. How when conquerors were coming to destroy temples and destroy deities, they could have just said, well, Krishna's supreme and he's unconquerable, so let the deity be there, no problem. What can they do? Even if they break him, they can't break Krishna. No, they went through so many difficulties. Some of them gave their lives to secretly take the deity away. Srinathji or Gopal, the pujari, who was a pure devotee, hid him in the bushes and ran away, so that the deity wouldn't be hurt. Govinda Dev, Madan Mohan, Gopinath, they were brought to Jaipur for protection. So to fear for Krishna, that fear increases the ecstasy of our love for Krishna. It's higher than being fearless. In fact, it's a state beyond being fearless, is to be afraid for God. Not afraid of God, but afraid for God. And Vrindavan Das Thakur explains, anyone who with faith and devotion hears this story of little Nimai going to sleep on the snake will never be struck by the snake of birth and death. One time, little Nimai was roaming around. By this time, he was just learning to walk. And some thieves happened to see the nice ornaments that his mother put on him. They thought, this is really easy. He's just a little tiny child, just learning to walk. We'll pick him up, take him to our hideout, take all the jewels, and then let him go. So there was crowds around Navadvip. So they very inconspicuously, they went up to the child and say, "Oh, little child," so that nobody would see that they were kidnapping him. They said, "Oh, little child, we can see that you're lost. We'll help you find your way home. Please come, get on my shoulders. We know how to bring you home." And then they had nice sandesh. And they kept putting it in his hand, and he kept eating them. He was very happy. He was riding on their shoulders. And they were and every now and then they say, "We're bringing you home, little child." So all the people around would think that they were nice people, but actually they were malicious. They were robbers. And Nimai was just having a really nice ride. He was having fun, eating sandesh, sweets. And they came to their hideout where they lived. They said, now they put little Nimai down, and as soon as they did, they realized they were at Nimai's house. Now this took some time. In the meanwhile, all the family of Nimai was looking everywhere for the child, and they couldn't find him. They were asking everyone, and nobody knew where he was. Again, fear. A little baby, just learning to walk, and he's gone. They were looking in every direction. They couldn't find him anywhere. There was nowhere else to look. It was desperate, hopeless. They were all sitting in the front of the house with their hands in their heads in total anguish. Where is Nimai? And all of a sudden, these two men show up with Nimai in their shoulders, and they didn't see him. But they put Nimai down. They said, "Where are I?" And Nimai ran. He cried out and ran right into the arms of Jagannath Mishra. And all the relatives started cheering and cheering and cheering. The boy has come. They were the thieves. We thought this was our hideout. We traveled such a long distance only to come right back to the house where we kidnapped him from. What happened? So they kind of looked around like they were just passers-by. And then when nobody was looking, they ran away as fast as they could. They kept running. They wouldn't stop. They ran and ran and ran until nobody else was around. And then they embraced each other and said, "We almost got caught today. It's only by the grace of Goddess Chandi that we escaped." They asked Nimai, "What happened?" And he said, "Oh, I got lost, and two really nice men, they came and brought me home. They wanted to give rewards to the men. They made a nice turban to come out to give to them, but they couldn't find." So in this beautiful little pastime, we find that even though these people were thieves, the Lord was so kind, He allowed them to serve Him. They made Him happy. And certainly, they were going to be liberated. One day, And it's getting late, so perhaps I should end with this story. One day, a Brahmin who was traveling to all the various holy places came to the house of Jagannath Mishra. This particular Brahmin, he was a very pure-hearted devotee of Gopal Krishna. His only two possessions was a Shalagram Shila and a deity of Gopal. And the temple was his own body. He had them hanging around his neck. And he, day and night, always chanted the names of Gopal. He had a Gopal mantra that he was reciting constantly. He practically never spoke anything else except the names of Krishna. And he always had tears of ecstatic love in his eyes. And whatever food he had, he would prepare and offer it to Gopal, and would never, ever, ever eat anything that he didn't personally offer to his Gopal and his Shalagram. In this way, he went from place to place. He came to the door of Jagannath Mishra. When Jagannath Mishra saw this devotee, he had such effulgence. He emanated such love, compassion, and light that Jagannath Mishra understood that this is a saint. And he fell down and clasped the feet of this pilgrim and invited him into his house, washed his feet, gave him a sitting place, and said, "We are so fortunate. Where do you live?" And the pilgrim said, "I have no home. I just travel around from place to place with my Gopal." And Jagannath Mishra said, "Wherever you go, you make that into a holy place. And we are so fortunate today, my family can serve you. Let us arrange for you to cook for Krishna." So he said, "Fine." So Jagannath Mishra cleaned the area, and this Brahmin would only eat what he personally cooked for Gopal. So he made a nice offering of rice and sabjis. And he sat down after the preparation. He put the offering before his deities and then chanted a mantra for Gopal to accept his loving offering. And as he was calling Gopal, little Nimai appeared before him, and with his tiny little lotus-like hand picked up a clump of the rice and put it in his mouth, was smiling very brightly and chewing on it. When the Brahmin saw this, nothing like this ever happened before. He was shocked. He cried out, "Hi, hi! Hi! My offering has been spoiled by this child." Jagannath Mishra saw little Nimai just handful after handful of rice, eating it right in front of the deity, and this Brahmin who's just shocked. Jagannath Mishra picked up a stick and came running. "I'll teach you, my child. You can't do this to my guests." And little Nimai ran away. And the Brahmin, he grabbed hold of Jagannath Mishra. He said, "The child is innocent. He doesn't know right from wrong. It's not his fault. It's my destiny. It's my karma. Don't you understand? It's not written in my destiny that I'm meant to eat nice cooked rice today. It's very seldom I get cooked rice anyway. Just usually I only get fruits and roots. So just bring me some fruits and roots and I'll be happy." Jagannath Mishra said, no, please cook again. We'll clean everything up, we'll bring new bhoga and prepare again. He said, I've already tried. Krishna doesn't want me to eat today. Jagannath Mishra fell at his feet, clasped to his feet, crying, please cook again. If you leave our house without eating a good meal, it will be a disgrace to our whole family. And then all the family members fell at his feet and begged him. He said, all right. And everyone was very happy. He started cooking. And Jagannath Mishra said to some neighborly ladies and family, said, take this restless Nimai out of the house and keep him with you. So they took him. And the pilgrim was cooking nice prasad. And when it was done, he put the offering before Gopal. And meanwhile, these ladies, they were playing with Nimai. They loved him more than their life. They said, Nimai, you don't know who this person is, you don't know where he's coming from, and yet you're eating food that he cooked. Don't you know that you could lose your caste by doing this? Nimai said, I'm a cowherd boy. I always eat food cooked by Brahmins. And they smiled and they didn't know what he was talking about. And they were telling him stories, and he was entertaining them by dancing and singing and smiling, and he got them so totally mesmerized in the network of his personality that he slipped away, and they didn't even notice he was gone. He went direct to the Brahmin, who was sitting with his hands folded, chanting the Gopal mantra, Gopal, please come accept my loving offering. And then he heard some chewing. He opened his eyes, and there was little Nimai with a handful of rice in his mouth, smiling, glancing upon the Brahmin. This was too much. He cried out, hi, again this child has spoiled my offering. Jagannath Mishra came running with a stick, and Nimai ran into another room and closed the door. Jagannath Mishra said, come out from here, I'm going to give you a thrashing today. I'm not going to allow you to make a fool of me and our whole family by your restless, mischievous activities. I must teach you. And the Brahmin was saying, no, he doesn't know, he's just a little boy. It's not his fault. You can only punish someone when they do something that they know is wrong, but he's too young to know right or wrong. Can't you see? Isn't it clear to you? It is not my destiny to eat nice rice. Just give me some fruits and roots. Jagannath Mishra said, you must eat. We'll clean up the kitchen and we'll bring you new bhoga and you could cook again. He said, it's already the middle of the night. I'm not going to cook again. And Jagannath Mishra, with his hand, he sat down with his head in his hands, feeling himself so unfortunate that a saintly guest came and his guest was not treated properly in his own home. At that time, the elder brother of Lord Chaitanya, Vishwarup, appeared. He was so beautiful, so cultured, so well-mannered. As soon as the pilgrim Brahmin saw Vishwarup, he gazed upon him. And he asked, who is this? Whose son could this be? Who is the fortunate mother and father? You are the son of Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi. How fortunate your house is that you have a son like this. Vishwarup bowed down. And he said to the Brahmin, we are so fortunate that such a saintly person as you has made our home into a holy place by coming. But we are so unfortunate that you didn't get to eat our rice. Please, cook again. He said, it's already late at night, and I've already tried twice, and I didn't get any rice. I can only eat what's offered to Gopal, and if a child eats it first, I can't offer it to Gopal. Vishwarup fell and clasped the feet of the Brahmin and begged him, please, please, it's not so late, cook again. And everybody gathered around him, bowing down, saying, please cook again. He said, all right. They started cooking. Jagannath Mishra asked, where is Nimai? They said, he's in the room and he's sound asleep. He is so asleep he doesn't even know anything in the world is happening. So there's no problem. Jagannath Mishra said, guard his bed, make sure he's asleep. And then Jagannath Mishra, from the outside of that door, he bolted it so no one could get in and out. And he stood in front of the door with a stick to guard it. Very, very tight security. Now it's the middle of the night. He finished his cooking. He put the food in front of his deity of Gopal, folded his palms, and chanted the Gopal mantra, begging Gopal to accept the offering. Just at that time, the Lord sent Nidra Devi, the goddess of sleep. She entered the house and everyone fell fast asleep except the Brahmin and Nimai, who came before the Brahmin and picked up a handful of rice and ate it. The Brahmin looked and saw this little boy gazing right into his eyes with a beautiful smile on his face, eating the rice. Hi! Again the child has spoiled my offering. But this time nobody heard him because they were sleeping. And then Nimai spoke. He said, oh Brahmin, what is my fault? You're calling me to come and eat, and I'm eating, and now you're becoming so upset. You're calling my name, you're calling my mantra, you're offering it to me, and because you're offering it with such love, I cannot resist coming. I cannot restrain myself from coming to accept the love of your offering. Can't you see? I am the Gopal who you have dedicated your life to serve and to please. And then the Lord manifested a beautiful form. He manifested the form of Krishna, who had a complexion like a newly formed monsoon rain cloud. Beautiful, beautiful lotus-like eyes. On his head, there was a string, a gunja mala, a string of gunja seeds. And on the top of that was a peacock feather. There was the Kaustubhamani upon his chest and the Vajayantik mala, a garland extending below his knees. He had a dhoti that was like the flashing yellow of lightning. This beautiful form of the Lord had 8 arms. 4 were holding the conch shell, lotus flower, a club, and the Sudarshan chakra disc. One hand was holding a pot of butter, and the other hand was eating it. And two hands were playing the flute. He saw behind the Lord there was a whole forest of kadamba trees. He saw the entire Vrindavan Dham manifested. And there were cows, gopas, gopis, Govardhan, Yamuna. Everything he meditated upon in the core of his heart, his whole life, was now physically being seen before him. The Supreme Lord, Gopal, his lovable object and the land of Vrindavan. Seeing this, he fell unconscious in ecstatic love. And then the Lord touched him. And that touch thrilled him like an electrical current of ecstasy, and he woke up. And again he saw this beautiful form. And then Lord Chaitanya spoke to him. He said, "You are my servant, birth after birth after birth. You do not remember, but I remember. In my last incarnation of Krishna, when I was a baby, this same age, you came to Gokul Mahavan, to the house of Nanda Maharaj, as a pilgrim Brahmin. And I stole your rice and ate it then too, and revealed to you who I really am." He said, "I have descended into this world with the greatest of all gifts, the gift of ecstatic love for God, Krishna Prema. And I have come to give this gift through propagating the Harinam Sankirtan movement throughout the world. People will realize the sweetest, highest of all goals of life through this chanting of my holy names. I order you to give me the promise that you will not tell anyone what you have seen." The reason he made him give this promise is because if Jagannath Mishra and the other devotees understood that their son was God, they would not have the same spontaneous freedom of loving exchanges. The Brahmin promised. And the Lord said, "You could stay here in Mayapur and you could watch my pastimes." And then that beautiful form became little baby or little child, Nimai again. And he disappeared back into his room and laid in bed and went to sleep. The Brahmin was in such spiritual trance. He started crying out, "Jai Gopal, Jai Gopal, Jai Gopal, Jai Gopal." And he was in such a trance of ecstatic love, he took the rice that Gopal had eaten and he started eating it, and he became so mad with love of God, he was smearing it on every limb of his body, chanting Jai Gopal. And all the family members of Nimai woke up. They all came running, and they saw this Brahmin with rice all over his body. And as soon as he saw them, he became very composed and sat down and was eating. Yes. They said, the offering went well, and I'm not honored to say. They were very happy. In his mind, in his heart, he was thinking, I have to tell them the supreme absolute truth. The son of Nanda and Yashoda, Krishna, is living in their house. If they understand that, they'll attain the ultimate perfection of life. But I can't tell them because I promised I wouldn't. That pilgrim Brahmin, he remained in Navadvip. And every day or so, he would come to beg at the house of Jagannath Mishra and Sachi. And while he was there, he would, in great prema, bhava, he would watch the pastimes of little Nimai. But he never told anyone. This beautiful story shows the beauty of bhakti. Yeyatamam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham mamavart manuvartanti manushya parata sarvasha. As we surrender with love to the Lord reciprocates. And it is this spontaneous love that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to the world to give. From the day of his birth to his most innocent little childhood pastimes. And it culminated years later when he established the Harinam Sankirtan movement. And empowered such great souls as Nityananda Prabhu, Raghunath Das Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and a whole parampara of great souls to be instruments of his compassion. And on this day of Sri Gaur Purnima, with very deep gratitude in our hearts, we thank His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for giving us this gift, the gift that the Lord had brought to this world in its purest state. When we see what is really the qualities of a Vaishnava, no envy, no pride, no selfishness, which is exhibited by the Lord and His own devotees, then following in those footsteps sincerely, we can actually understand the Lord's appearance in this world. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvata tyaktva deham punara janma naiti mameti sorjana. Krishna tells in Gita, one who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities in this world never takes birth again in this material world, but attains my supreme abode. What does it really mean to understand? It means to understand through the lives of the great souls. Thank you very much.